Welcome to Season Liberally. My name's Cecil. Today we're going to be making Huevos Rancheros. I really love this recipe. It's great for brunch. It's great for having people over. You're going to really love it. I hope you stick around. So this recipe is super simple. It's mostly going to cook in the oven. In fact, I'm going to cook it all in the oven. You can, if you like, cook part of it on the stove, but I'm actually going to do it all in the oven today. It's one of these recipes that you can prep your ingredients, make the salsa, and you can even put it in the fridge overnight if you want, and then make the eggs the following day. We're gonna make it all in one day though today. We're gonna get started right away. We're gonna toss some vegetables in some olive oil, some tomato paste, a little bit of seasoning, and we're gonna roast those in our oven and make a beautiful salsa. So that's how we're gonna start this. So you're gonna wanna core your tomatoes. Tomatoes have a little piece on the top here, a little core. You do not want that in your final dish. You can cut the tomato in half and then remove the core just by cutting on a diagonal right next to it, and the core will come straight out. So you could do that if you like to, or you can just core it with your paring knife. These tomatoes eventually have to be halved anyway, so if it's easier, you can just use your knife to do it that way. So this recipe is essentially as hot as you want to make it. Now I leave a little bit of chili in this, a little bit of rib just to make sure that it has a little bit of spice in it. And spice is actually, one of the things I would encourage you to do is try to make sure that you try a little bit of spice in spicy food. I know there's people out there who will immediately say, I don't like any spice in my food. I don't like any kind of heat in my food. My suggestion is I would try it even with just a little bit. The capsaicin will actually open up your taste buds and give it a different flavor. It will have a different flavor with heat than if it had none at all. And a lot of recipes are made specifically to be hot. So I would encourage you to try to open your palate up and try a little bit of heat. Even if you don't like it that much, try just a little and keep trying it because it's gonna have a totally different flavor profile than if you had no heat in it at all. So I'm going to show you how to actually de-rib these. Now, most of the heat inside of jalapenos is from the seeds and from the rib, the white ribs inside. And so I'm going to show you a quick way to actually de-rib the entire jalapeno. You cut along the side like so, and then you just roll it. And as you roll it, it cuts the center out. Like so. So like I said, I like to add just a touch of heat to this, not a ton. I don't like it super hot myself, but I do want to add just a bit so that it has a little tiny bit of spice to it. I'm actually leaving these in big chunks because they're gonna roast. It's gonna roast. I'm gonna lay it down while it's inside the oven and it's gonna roast. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in chunks, and we're gonna use a food processor later to actually just grind this down and turn it into a salsa. So I'm not actually going to be cutting these very much at all. So now the onion, we wanna keep the root end. We wanna get rid of the other end, the sprout end. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it in half first. And then this is the root end. You can see the root there. I'm actually gonna nip off the top. And this is gonna make it easy for me to reach down and pull back the skin. We do not need the skin on there. We wanna pull as much off as we can. We're gonna try to keep these root ends on here We need to keep these root ends on here because they're going to keep the entire piece together. And as you can see on both of these onions, the root end is still there. It has a little tiny bits of that onion paper on it. That's okay. We're going to cut through. We're going to try not to cut that root end off. We're going to cut through it, and we're going to cut this into wedges. So I'm going to cut down like so, and I'm going to cut down like so, and we got nice big onion wedges. This is going to make it easier for me later on so it doesn't actually fall apart. If it falls apart in the oven, then a lot of it's going to start to brown. You just want to brown the outside. You don't want all of your onion to be brown. So now into this, I'm going to add a couple of cloves of garlic. I'm not going to do anything to this garlic except for I'm just going to take the skin off of it. That's it. We're going to add a little bit of tomato paste. Now, I like to add about a tablespoon of tomato paste. I'm just going to squeeze a little in here. It's about a tablespoon worth of tomato paste put directly inside. I got some cayenne pepper here, so I'm going to add a little bit of cayenne. And I got some ground cumin. Now we got some salt we want to put in here, just a little. We don't want a ton of salt in here. You're going to salt this to taste later, but the salt's going to draw out some of this moisture once you put it into the oven. So you want to put some salt on this now, and then later you're going to taste it to see whether or not it's seasoned properly. We're going to add a little bit of pepper to this right now too. And like I said, you're probably going to season this later on. We're going to add couple of tablespoons of oil, enough to toss all of this in and get it coated with the oil. So I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of oil directly in, and then I'm going to use my hands to toss it. So now I have this tossed, ready to go. I'm actually going to just lay this in a sheet pan, and I'm going to put it in the oven. But what I want to do is I want to arrange it so that the skins of all of these are up, because I want these to roast. And so I am going to arrange these so that the skins are facing up in the oven. And that's going to, if there's going to be any char at all, I want it to be on the skins. And it will definitely char the skins, but it would not char the inside of this or the inside of this. And we want to make sure if there's any char at all, it gets on top of these skins. So now I'm just going to put this into the oven. So while I'm cooking the vegetables for the salsa, I am going to get a little bit of garnish ready. I'm actually going to be mincing this cilantro. Normally, if I was going to be using cilantro, these stems are perfectly edible. But since I am using this as a garnish, I don't want the stems. You can save these if you like, and you can actually use those. Those are perfectly fine to put. You could put those in salsa if you like. But since I'm not actually cooking the cilantro at all, and I'm going to be sprinkling it on at the end, I want to make sure that I'm just using the leaves so it presents better. We're going to serve it with lime wedges. One way to make sure that your lime will have a nice bit of juice that comes out and doesn't shoot all over is to cut your lime in the center. If you cut it in the center, it will fold on it in on itself when you squeeze it, and that will allow you to not shoot the lime juice all over your table. So as you can see, there's a little bit of char on this. We could see there's a touch of char. These are while they're still together, also caught a little bit of char. What we got to do is we got to let this cool for about 10 minutes. So for this recipe, we are using a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can dice and really cut up, even if you wanted to with a masher, mash and dice and cut up the peppers, the onions, and the garlic. Really smash it up on your cutting board. Maybe even use the side of your knife to sort of smash it up and really rock your blade back and forth. Get it nice and cut. Move that into another bowl, and then you're going to sort of coarsely chop your tomatoes. Now, I'm using a food processor. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna load up the peppers, I'm gonna load up the onions, and I'm gonna wind up loading the garlic all up in here right away. And then I'm gonna pulse that until it's a real nice fine, almost a paste. And then I will add my tomatoes and pulse those so that they still remain a little chunky. So I'm just gonna pulse this. So now there's a lot of juice in here, and I want to get it all inside of here as much as possible. And now here, I'm probably only going to pulse this like 5 times. And that is perfect. That's exactly where I want to be, 5 times. Now's a perfect time to test your seasonings, right? This is the perfect time because when you serve this, you want it to taste perfect. So I'm gonna taste it. Definitely needs salt still, okay? So I'm gonna add some salt to it. If you wanted to at this point, you could add some of those reserved ribs of the pepper. If you think it's not hot enough for you, you can add some of that in. And now remember, you do not want to use the same spoon. You either want to wash your spoon with soap and water, or you want to get a new spoon. I think just tiniest touch more salt, a little bit of pepper, and we're going to call it done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this inside of this pan. What I have here is this pan. I'm going to put inside this pan this salsa. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and make a couple of little wells inside of here so that I can crack an egg inside of it. Now, if you feel more comfortable and you don't want to crack an egg directly inside of this, you can crack an egg inside of a small bowl and then fold it right into here. That's perfectly acceptable too. You don't have to feel like you need to crack an egg directly inside. So inside each of these wells is going to be an egg. I'm going to add a little pepper. Touch of salt on top of the eggs so that they're seasoned. Now I'm going to cover this. I'm going to put this in the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. So there it is. Now remember, one thing you got to remember, if you cook this in the oven like I did, you want to make sure you do not grab this pan. This pan just came out of the oven. So always make sure you keep one little oven mitt or whatever on your hand here, just to make sure you don't burn yourself. And so there you have it. This is a wonderful brunch recipe. If you cook the salsa the night before, you get the salsa in your pan the day of. I like to actually warm it up on the stove a little bit before I put it in the oven. You can also do this completely on the stove if you wanted to. Once it comes out of the food processor, you can set it directly on top of your stovetop. Warm that salsa all the way through until it's hot. Create your wells, crack your eggs in there, let it go for about 5 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on the doneness of your yolk, and it will be perfect for you. All right, moment of truth here. What I love about this recipe is how the eggs sort of soak up all that flavor. And when they cook in that salsa, The salsa has this really bright, very fresh, gardeny sort of flavor to it. And the eggs just soak all that up. I hope you try this out. If you like this video, please give it one of those thumbs up down below. Please share this video with your friends and subscribe to the channel. If you go down there and hit subscribe, there's a little bell. If you hit the bell, you'll get notifications whenever I post a video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this recipe.